I agreed to give you refuge here if you were willing to fight with us against the armies of your countrymen. The sons of King Ragnar Lothbrok on our side, prepared to fight for us.
Welcome to episode number 2 of the Odin's Eye podcast. I'm here with my great co-host, King McKay from New Zealand. Today, we are going to be breaking down the Vikings 2018 San Diego Comic-Con trailer, and we're going to break it down. King, there was a lot in that trailer, man.
Yeah, there was like so much just going on. When I first watched it, I was just kind of like sitting back in my chair, just getting information flying at me. But there was clear like horrible themes going across it, and so much to talk about for every character because they gave away so much, and that's why we wanted to dive into this.
And I think it's safe to say that Ragnar Lothbrok has brought Ragnarok to the world of Vikings.
Yes, it's going down in the worst possible way, and we're gonna love it the whole time.
So where should we start off with? I thought, one of the more interesting things that we saw, King, was the Seer on fire. And he is foretold a lot, especially to all of kind of the main characters. They've all went to him for vision and kind of to see where their destinies may go in this world that we see. What do you think? This is kind of ominous, I think, though. The ancient seer biting the dust. Is Ivar taking care of business and like burning him because the seer told him something that he didn't like, or is he just being burned in like typical Viking fashion, like a funeral pyre?
I would love for it to be Ivar killing him and just getting more and more mad because he just heard something he did not want to hear, like you won't be king of England or something, and he's like no, and burns him. But he's been dying for quite some seasons now, so it's more than likely it's just his time has like passed off, just because when Ragnarok comes, all of the prophecies have like come to realization now, so there's no need for him until the new era of Vikings like rolls around. And so it's more likely it's just going to be his like funeral, whatever. But it does bode really badly for like all of Viking culture that he is dying, and that all of the horrible things he said that's going to come is going to come very soon. So
we both obviously said too that Floki might be able to fill the role as the seer kind of towards the end of the show if they want to go through with that. But certainly it is not a good thing that the seer is dying.
Yeah, it's my biggest hope that they live Floki by having him replace him later on, but it won't happen until like a lot of shit has been resolved. He needs to be like the new rebirth seer of the Vikings world. He won't be like the replacement right away. And with all the stuff we've seen in Iceland that we'll talk about a little bit long, that seems like a real possibility now with this trailer.
One thing I found super interesting, King, is I was watching the Vikings San Diego Comic-Con panel with Michael Hurst. It had Clive Stand and Rollo. It had Lagertha, Catherine Winnick. It had Ivar, Bjorn, Torvi. And one of the things that was really interesting is Michael Hurst was talking about the writing process and how things were getting darker in this universe. And one thing that I actually wanted to read for the podcast, and some of you may already know about, but it's the Vikings poem Voluspa. It's part of the Poetic Eddas, and basically it's just some of the things that the seer has said actually on the show have been foreshadowed in Ragnarok. So I just want to read the whole poem, and then we can kind of dissect and go through it. It sates itself on lifeblood of fated men. Paint red the powers' homes with crimson gore. Black become the sun's beams in the summers that follow, weather's all treacherous. Do you still seek to know? And what? Brothers will fight and kill each other. Sisters children will defile kinship. It is harsh in the world. Whoredom rife, an axe age, a sword age, a shield's riven, a wind age, a wolf age, before the world goes headlong. No man will have mercy on another. So we're kind of seeing I mean, Ivar against everyone. I mean, that's pretty much what's going down.
There's dangerous seas. Withers are all treacherous. We're going to see that a lot clearly in this trailer already. Brothers fighting. All the stuff happening with Margaret and whatever. Horder's rife.
Everybody seems to be switching love partners. I mean, Hvitserk, we're going to talk a little bit about him after. He seems to be laying with Margaret, and Ivar's doing the creep job when they're sleeping. So,
and the world is definitely going headlong, and no man has any mercy for another. It's like a wish list of what I want for season 5 in this poem.
But let's talk about the main theme of the trailer, and then let's kind of go into everything. I think it's pretty clear the main theme of the trailer is Ivar versus everyone.
Yeah, we talked a little bit.
It's not looking good for Ivar.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about how he's like pushing away everyone, including Vixen, and he's getting like super paranoid about everything. And if Ragnarok is coming, him being this like super tyrannical, crazy, off the chain kind of person, pushing everyone away, getting paranoid, becoming like the mad king of that area, where he just doesn't trust anyone apart from like people who are willing to like blood eagle, you know, or sacrifice people for friends or whatever. And we see a lot of that imagery.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's like his pyromancers, but with blood eagles. But we saw a lot of the like tyrannical imagery in the trailer with like the men with the helmets on and the torches, and you know, what were some of the main symbolisms you saw in that trailer?
I mean, fire and ice symbolizing a kind of death, and you know, I mean, fire symbolizing, you know, the burning down of their culture. In both cases, it is not good in this scenario. But in Ragnarok, it said is that fire and ice will sunder the world, and then there'll eventually be a flood, and the land will become fertile again. So basically, the world is, you know, we're seeing and is obviously in part of the trailer the big fire behind part of that army, and then, you know, they're both going towards each other, is signifying destruction, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, there was that one scene of them pulling down like a Norse statue, and I felt like that was something that like Ivar might be doing, because he feels so grandiose about himself that he feels he's above like God imagery or whatever, and he wants to replace himself as that, higher than them. And that would be a real big shift for the Vikings culture if he tries to make himself like a Rome-esque emperor above the gods.
You know, but it could lead to him becoming a martyr. I mean, he's not. As we see, we can kind of shift. Everyone is against Ivar. We see Bjorn, Ubba, Torvi, and Lagertha in front of King Alfred, and he offers them a deal. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the King Alfred plot is awesome. They're putting all of my favorite characters in a bunch and then teaming up with my most favorite character, Alfred. And it's going to be this, like, you know, last season we got this more like Avengers, one team against the other team. This time it's just one supervillain Ivar against all of the superheroes. So that's going to be really cool. And not only will it just be like them teaming up, there's a really thick plot growing there with his brother, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, Aethelred. It is, you know, there seems, I mean, we heard, I can't remember if it was Lagertha, people that, you know, that people are scheming behind Alfred's back that don't want him in power. We obviously saw, you know, Judith, who kind of supplanted Aethelred, who is, you know, in line before Alfred because he is senior to Alfred. But obviously, Judith's connection to Athelstan and all of that kind of complicates matters, and she's muddying the political waters, and that's becoming more complicated. And we got to think that Alfred may not actually be safe, right? I mean, we talk about this all the time in Game of Thrones. Someone always wants power, and someone is always looking to supplant someone else. So there could be that kind of game going on in Alfred's plotline, on top of the Vikings being there and him offering them amnesty if they fight for his army and take care of Ivar.
Like, he's going to definitely get a lot of shit for doing that. Like, backing Vikings and, like, bringing them into the fold is not exactly the best PR stunt he could do. But ironically, with all of his, like, lords being a bit shifty and not willing to trust him and people, like, conspiring, he will trust them immediately a lot more, and it'll build that relationship between them a lot faster because he's forced in this position where he has to trust them and work with them to try and save his own throne.
I mean, we talked about this before the podcast, Egbert screwing Ragnar out of the initial agreement. And, you know, we think that Alfred might do things a little bit differently because he does want to keep the peace. He wants to ensure that his people survive and there isn't this war that continues forever. Obviously, you know, there might be other King Aelas around type of characters that complicate matters that are, you know, I mean, it's not just Alfred. It's not like later in his story when he, you know, unifies most of England. We're still early on in that process of seeing Alfred kind of develop as a young man. So I'm sure there is going to be some sort of issues. Does he have a haircut? I mean, he has hair. I mean, it looks like he might get a haircut at some point during the season, signifying some sort of change maybe.
Yeah.
and he's on a horse, so he might actually get more involved than we think. He's more of like the political person than Aethelred, who is in there fighting with the men and whatnot in York and all of that.
Yeah, we could get like a very similar scene we got with like in Game of Thrones, where like his rebirth as a character to being a fully fledged king that's like recommended, like respected by his people and everything, will be like he'll get coronated and then he'll have this big like cutting off his hair and all of his past kind of dripping down his shoulders. He's new. He comes out with a sword. He's got armor on and he leads the forces of England out into the field to fight Ivar. It could be like a signifying him reaching that point where he was just a kid who was trying to play at king to him being fully realized as a king after he deals with all the plots and sabotaging.
Especially the way this show deals with symbolism and imagery, it's very important to the foreshadowing and how these stories develop. And Michael Hurst talked about that on the panel, about how important it is to him to, stay true to a lot of these things in the history. Obviously, they can't do that completely. Otherwise, it would just, the show wouldn't work. But for specifically for Vikings, I think they, I really love the writing of the show. Obviously, some people didn't enjoy the first half of season 5 as much, but I'm the second half of the season looks absolutely batshit crazy, and I'm really excited. I think the next point that we should kind of talk about is, we obviously Ube, Bjorn, Torbjorn, Lagertha are in chains before Alfred, but one thing that we talked about in the last version of our podcast was Ubba becoming king of Middle Francia during the history of the Vikings. So the seer did say he would become king of something. Is this deal kind of going to be something good for Ubba, you think, maybe?
Yeah, like we've seen the show had this creative license to try and shift what happened with the history a little bit by staying on theme of what happened in history. And if Ubba became a king of, rather than Middle Francia, like a king of England, and he was integrated into that plotline, he would still be westernized or whatever or more. So it would be a very similar change as he becomes more Christianized, more westernized. And we do see him in a few of these shots with like the white traditional kind of England clothing on, and he's fighting his own countrymen. So if he like does a similar thing we saw Rollo do, where he kind of gives up a few of his Viking roots to take that kind of power or level of respect in this new world, that could be homage to his history as becoming a king of Middle Francia.
And it's quite interesting too, because Rollo is the Duke of Normandy, right? And he kind of has his own thing. So Rollo could be a huge influence on Ubba instead of Hvitserk, like we thought. And Hvitserk is more involved in the Ivar plot line. So things could be switching around a little bit more. And we know Rollo, we're going to talk about him last, him and Floki anyways, because he's going to obviously be Team Rollo, we think. But that is something interesting that we kind of have to look out for, I think. Ubba being most like Ragnar's good side, I want to say.
His less violent side.
His less violent side, and Ivar is the totally batshit crazy side. So another interesting thing we found in the trailer was Hvitserk. Can you talk a little bit about that, King?
So we finally saw that Vixid has made his mind and he's solidated and he's going with Bjorn, which is a big shift because like he was totally against Bjorn. He brought Rollo's army to crush Bjorn, and now he's switching sides again. And this has to be not really from what Bjorn's done, but more from Ivar isolating himself from everyone and getting mad jelly over seeing him with what you think is Margaret or some girl anyway, and just having this sexual ability that Ivar doesn't have and making him feel inferior within his own kingdom, even if he is so much greater, like leader of the army and king or whatever. Vixid's still making him feel inferior.
Yeah, and that's kind of the complex with Ivar. He's lashing out in a way like we talked about previously, about how his brothers even announced to him verbally, like, hey, we don't see you like that. We love you for the way you are. But Ivar has this mindset where he still is paranoid about that, and it's lending to his madness more and more and more. It lends to this erratic behavior that we're seeing with Ivar, and I don't think it's going to stop. And he might do something that's regrettable again, like Sigurd, but with Hvitserk. I mean, so
he might try.
Do you think one of Ragnar's sons is going to die this season? I don't know.
Like, if they do, I feel like it would be a lot more impactful because they're going to build them up a lot more. Like, because Vixid was the most undeveloped character, and they develop him more this season, then killing him will be even harder on us. I don't.
Because they've done that with a few characters. I mean,
Yeah.
they've done that with King Harold's brother, for
Yeah,
example.
they build them up and then just nick him.
And we were,
Like,
and we were like, what? Like, there's so much story for him.
We're like, we're finally getting on board with his message, and we're like, yes, this character's gonna be cool. And then they ruined him.
But specifically talking about Vitzerk, you know, he could be laying with Margaret, but Ivar is there creepily, like watching him, and then like, you know, Vitzerk is like, are you gonna kill me next? And obviously see, you know, parts throughout the trailer, like there's a lot of death, the symbolism of death within the trailer, heads on spikes. This is,
Yeah.
I mean, Ivar, the tyrannical rule, man. He's going crazy.
He's hanging people in the streets, literally, and like just not even phased by it as he walks away. There's like heads on spikes. He's building these huge walls. They've got like tiki torches, which are a lot more related with bad things these days. And but it's like,
yeah,
it's clear what Vikings is going for. That he's just absolutely brutal at the moment, and we're going to see a lot more of that in this half season.
And we spoke about last time about how selfish it was of Ragnar to suggest to be ruthless, to basically put his own revenge into Ivar, to thrust him forward in his life too. And that's kind of the sad thing, is that Ivar is an intelligent guy, but this is the only thing that he sees. So it's consuming him into being this person that he could be better, you know?
Like, it's strange because the more that Ivar does this, it turns out that like the whole failure in Paris might not have been Ragnar's greatest failure. It could have been his just absolute ruining of all of his culture, his entire kingdom, by throwing into civil war, by making Ivar this way. Like could be like his legacy could be just Ragnarok. He caused Ragnarok with his legacy. That would be just crazy because it would shift the whole perspective of his life again.
It's so interesting to see, obviously, the early beginnings of Ragnar, you know, obviously the pushing forward, his hero's journey, him accomplishing so much. But the second half of his journey, he made a lot of bad decisions. You know, I mean, he was, in the show specifically, I mean, eating this leaf that is very much, you know, probably an opiate, becoming addicted to that, warping his mind, you know, killing his partner there in crime, you know, like someone that was looking out for his essentially well-being. She said, hey, like, even, you know, you shouldn't be taking this as much. And like, you know, she was like trying to let him expand his consciousness and relax a little bit. But of course, Ragnar doesn't have limits when it comes to stuff like that. But his legacy, I mean, like, you know, giving away all the gold, I mean, taking all of these men that are clearly not prepared for battle over to England, and all of these decisions, you know, and clearly saying these things to Ivar were not good choices.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about King Harold's kingdom and some of the shots we get of the bone whales and what Bjorn's doing over there?
Yeah, you had some really cool thoughts on this one.
So, like, in the trailer, we saw two shots, which I didn't recognize straight away, but people in the comments pointed out. Danny Johnson pointed out to me that Bjorn's sailing the flagship of King Harold's fleet with a big deer head on the front. And we see this scene of him, like, sneaking up and, like, attacking people, taking them out. So he could be stealing his flagship and a lot of his other ships to try and escape to England. So what could be happening is we see that there's like this whole chase scene or whatever, and they're trying to find him or whatever with that narration we get in the beginning. So Bjorn, Lagertha, and their forces could escape Kattegat, double back, go into King Harold's domain, steal the ships, and then escape to England. Just like cutting away their ability to chase them overseas because they stole most of their ships, and getting away clean. Well, that could be a really interesting way to move that whole plot from where they are now back into the England area.
And we also see King Harold with Bjorn after. So, I mean, is even King Harold going to be opposing Ivar? Like, literally everyone. That's and, you know, obviously King Harold has his own ambitions. We know that, you know, he wants to become king of all Norway. So this is something that I think that is going to be another contention point in the season. Is, I mean, obviously his wife with child, I mean, she was raped, so that probably wasn't his child. She's gone, and obviously his brother's gone. So what is, I mean, everybody is losing something. Is he going to lose his life? He could be a character that can bite the dust, I find.
Yeah, because Lagertha's kind of given up her claim on Kattegat now, that she's become like a little bit broken and her hair's like gone back and whatever. Bjorn's never had an ambition for staying in Norway. And if Uber stays more in England, then that gives them the ability that none of them have the ambition for Kattegat anymore. They're like, you can have that, you can have all of Norway if you side with us. Ivar's the only one that's going to stop you. And that could be a really good way to convince him to kind of come to their side, because all of them have dropped that ambition now.
And one thing that I did want to note specifically about Lagertha's hair, Catherine Winnick on the San Diego Comic-Con panel actually confirmed that Lagertha's hair is fully gray, and she's going to have a new look this season. So they said that was for a specific purpose. We're going to figure out kind of what's going to be going on with her this season. But yeah, and she looks still badass with it. I mean, she hasn't aged at all. So that's one thing that a lot of people do comment on that I find funny. But yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you there. You know, that is definitely a scenario I could see going down. But then we also have Mr. Rollo entering again. We see towards the end of the trailer, I'm back to see how things are. He's curious about how Viking culture is after being in Francia and starting his own country essentially in Normandy. So what's going to be going on there? I mean, Team Rollo is for Team Rollo. He said it straight up on the San Diego Comic-Con panel.
As much as I would like to see him back Vixit somewhat, I don't think he's going to be fully just devoting everything to what Vixit wants. He's definitely got his own agenda and ambitions and whatever. And this trailer has especially left very little Rollo on it. We only got one small bit at the end, so they're hiding the big twist or the impact that Rollo's going to have in the whole plot until it actually comes out, or maybe a lot closer, which is keeping the suspense on, because we know he's not going to sit around and do nothing. He's got a connection to almost every Kingle character we know in the series, plus he's got a giant army, plus he's got ambition, and he's at the end of life, so he can do whatever he wants,
I'm really interested to see what happens with Rollo, because the Frankian army is going to be with him, and I'm sure he's informed the Frankian army of the ways of Viking culture and to what to watch out for, essentially. I mean, he is Viking himself. Obviously, he's more accustomed to more the way of Frankian life now. But what's he really back for? What did Ivar promise him? What does he really want? Because we expect him to do one thing, and then he always does the other.
In the history, we know that this is kind of his desperate attempt to reconnect with his roots. And he's keeping his cards close to his chest, clearly, at the moment. But if he wants to reconnect to his roots, I think he wants to make his name in the Viking world as powerful and prominent as it is in the Francia world. Whether that's him becoming a powerful figure, or whether he's the person who installs the next generation of power and whatever. I don't think he would do much until at least the end of this half season. Maybe even he might even survive into season 6, just because we haven't seen anything in this trailer, and that he's just kind of seeing how things plays out, choosing what sides he wants to go to, being very ambiguous. So, yeah, I don't know, but he definitely will have a really well-trained army, because his job in the Francia army was to train them to fight Vikings. So he's definitely going to have them pretty well under belt and knowing how to combat that. So it's a formidable force he's got in his hands.
Ivar, now this is going to be, I think interactions between him and Ivar are the most interesting, because Ivar is completely unhinged, and Rollo is someone that's pretty intelligent. He's made his moves and been pretty successful for himself, obviously, achieving what he has. I don't think Rollo is someone that Ivar can scare. So I'm really interested to see. I mean, Rollo might be yeah, you're crazy, but I'm really interested to see if Ivar takes some sort of aggressive front towards Rollo.
Yeah, I think Rollo won't be doing much with Ivar at all, because he's definitely talking with Harold every single time we see him. His forces landed in Harold's domain. So he might actually stay quite away from Ivar, because he just doesn't know him, doesn't have a connection with him, and he's just batshit crazy. He's not afraid of him or whatever. He's got this giant army. He's got his own things. He's going to watch him play out, see how he devolves, see if he is a good son of Ragnar or not. And I doubt he's going to judge him very well. And Ivar won't like him at all. He doesn't trust him at all. Even when he came the first time, he was very suspicious, very held back, didn't know what they wanted, but he was willing to use them to get what he wanted. It's revenge first, and then he'll deal with them later.
So the other major parts that we haven't talked about in so far are Floki and Bishop Hedman. I think Floki is crying. We didn't get much of him at all. They said that this plot line is going to have a big payoff, and me and you both actually have the theory that it's going to be Ragnar appearing in spirit or ghost form to Floki at some point this season. And I actually think that's why he's crying. That's my personal thought on this, but it could be a completely different reason. Like Loki could be at an even lower point than we've seen him before.
Like we saw, and then when he first got to Iceland, he was like, "This is the land of the gods. It's so magical and whatever." But as we see it get way more dark and more people were dying, and the blood feuds kind of get out of control in this new place, we hear that line, "The gods are not here," or something like that, and that could be him thinking like, "This land isn't actually what I thought it was." Like everyone else is starting to realize like they were tricked, but himself was always very confident that he had come to the land of the gods. But if he disowns this land, it's like, no, there's no gods here. That could be a good motivation for him to leave the land, to give up on Iceland. I'm like, no, this is empty land. It's too horrible. There's no gods here. And that could be him coming back to Kattegat and, replacing the Seer or whatever. But I want to see that payoff, and I'm not entirely sure.
And he's really well respected in Kattegat for the most part. But obviously Ivar is there now, and he's really close to Ivar. So we could see some sort of scenario where Floki and Ivar, maybe Floki kills Ivar, some sort of crazy twist, and he's crying because of that. I don't know. There's all sorts of crazy thoughts going in my head because of Floki. They didn't give us much, but he's one of my favorite characters, and he's kind of towards the end of his journey. So I'm interested to see if there's a twist with him and where they take his story.
Yeah, I would definitely want to see Ragnar flashback or vision or something like if he dies kind of talking to Ragnar and then they both walk up the steps to Valhalla together. That would be a way I would like to see him go out. But it wouldn't be as big of a twist. It would be more of just a good ending. But it's really, we need more footage on him because they kept it so vague that we're just going to speculate until we die pretty much.
There'll probably be some more trailers, obviously. And I think, probably the last part we got to talk about, and what we actually want to announce before we end here is, and we're going to talk about Bishop Hedman, is let us know in the comment section what your theories are, what your thoughts are. Me and King McKay are actually going to be going live on his channel next weekend. We haven't decided yet if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday. King will let everyone know, but all your comments and all your kind of questions, we're going to be addressing those in the next podcast. So make sure you let us know. This is something that's super exciting, and we know we don't have Vikings for a while, but this is something that we can talk about and be hyped about right now. So let us know your thoughts and comments and all of that in the comment section of this video, and we will address all of your awesome questions. We did have some amazing questions. I just kind of want to go over the people that did send us some awesome questions. Just give them a quick shout out, King. It was Fu Shao Bane, who actually told us about the body of the seer being burned. Danny Johnson, that wasn't Kattegat. He said it was King Harold's kingdom that Bjorn attacked first. You want to read out the other ones, King?
We got Juzo. He was talking about King Harold and Vixid. There was like talking about how all the major characters were kind of going against Ivar and how Roller will play in that. We had AM11 who really missed Ragnar, and so we were talking about Ragnar a bit and how we could get him again. And then we had Amber, and he was talking about the future of Uber and how he might have leadership in England, which is something we talked about a bit here. And we want to really see with Uber because he has so much history and so much awesome things that could happen with him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're going to end it on this note. Bishop Hegmund is going to be Lagertha's love interest, obviously. Catherine Winnick talked about it on the San Diego Comic-Con panel, and he's going, they've really connected in a kind of a way that Ragnar and Athelstan connected. And I think that at this point in her life, she needs something like that. But Bishop Hegmund looks in big trouble in the trailer.
It's going to be a really, really dark love line from what we've seen. It's the imagery with it is just blood covered everywhere, fire and yelling, and it's more internal conflict and things with the bishop, probably not as much with Agatha, but it's going to be a dark, brutal love story that's not going to end well for either side, I feel. But I can't wait for us to get more from that.
Yeah, and this was super fun and exciting to talk about. We kind of talked the other day, and we're like, we got to do another one of these podcasts. We got to put it on the channel. And like I said, we're going to talk about this again. King's already done an amazing video on his channel, so you can, in the description of this video, go check out the link to his channel. He does amazing content for Game of Thrones as well. King, can you talk a little bit about what you do on your channel?
Yeah, so on my channel, I do a lot of the awesome videos you see here on Azura Hype's channel. I do a whole bunch of theories and analysis of a whole bunch of Game of Thrones stuff. I've been getting into a lot of Vikings the last 2 seasons, like we see that Azura Hype is now. So you can see preview breakdowns and trailers when the season's actually out. Same with Game of Thrones. I've also done a Dawn video recently, and a video that's quite controversial about the Starks. So if you're a fanboy of them, come check that out because you'll hate me afterwards.
I hate you now. I just want to state that I watched the video. But we want to thank you for watching this video. Of course, like I said, leave your comments, thoughts, suggestions in the description of this video. If you do want to support this and want us to keep on making videos, let us know if you enjoyed it. Like this video, subscribe to King's channel or my channel if you want to see more Vikings content. You can also follow me and King on Twitter. Like I said, all the information for social media, and that will be in the description of this video. King McKay's Patreon, if you do want to support his channel and mine, in the description of this video. But that's going to be it for episode number 2 of the Odin's Eye podcast. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all in the next one. Skull!
Skull.
May I ask, why are you here now in person?
Because I miss the old place.